Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Send, and in today's video I bring you my recommendations for league starters in 3.24 Necropolis League. Initially, I had 3 builds for you today, but with the release of the next season, Ball Lightning of Static will no longer be usable with totems, so that build is entirely dead. Nevertheless, the remaining builds are very capable of handling all the game has to offer and to throw at you, and are able to do so on a very small budget with no uniques, making them perfect candidates for your league starter. So today we are going to be talking about Trickster, Explosive Trap of Shrapnel, and a Saboteur, X-Blast Mine. So let's start with X-Blast. X-Blast Mines is a build that has been around for quite a few leagues, but has never really been a very popular build. This could be for a variety of reasons, although the Mines playstyle might not be for everybody, due to essentially being a 2-button build when played optimally. With the new league, however, you will have access to a mastery that allows you to simply move and your mines will detonate as you do, making this a much more fluid playstyle, making it very similar to the playstyle we have right now, where you can put detonate mines on left click and play very much like a singular button build, like most builds are in POE. The clear is good, although not the best when compared to screen-wide clear builds like Lightning Arrow or a Wonder character, but is still very respectable and your single target is incredibly high. With some good investment, you are capable of defeating every single boss the game has to throw at you, and depending on where they stand in terms of balance, maybe the newly added tier 17 bosses as well. For the Ascendancy order, I recommend going Demolition Specialist first, and after that depends on what you are in need of. Born in the Shadows and Pyromaniac are very good for defenses and sustain. An Explosives expert for the extra damage when the enemy is burning, shocked or chilled, which with the way X-Blast works, will be essentially all the time for you. For leveling, I played Stormblast Mine Orb of Storms until swapping to X-Blast when I first got it. Also, keep in mind when swapping to X-Blast, I would recommend always have a Blasphemy Curse setup, optimally with Elemental Weakness. For scaling factors in this build, we make use of double curses to reduce the enemy's cold resistance to the lowest possible. This works because X-Blast hits are defended by the lowest resistance of the enemy, and we pick cold simply because this allows us to freeze enemies, adding an extra little layer of defensives to the build. On top of this, we also scale mind damage, spell damage, critical strike chance and damage, allowing us to reach a few million incredibly easy, especially on bosses where we can make use of our Wither Totem setup. This build requires no uniques, however, a Profane Proxy makes it so we have a very easy time running double curses to further reduce the resistance of your enemy, and being able to apply curses automatically to enemies far away with the help of our Scatterbots. All in all, this is a phenomenal build that you can try if you never tried Mines. It's very good as an entry to the archetype, very straightforward to gear and to scale. It's very powerful. And if you want just an all-arounder, great boss killer, this is the build for you, while also being very capable of clearing maps in a very smooth way. Now let us talk about Explosive Trap. Explosive Trap, in this case of Shrapnel, was added last league with the addition of Transfigured Gems to the game. It works similar to the base Explosive Trap, however this one has a lot more secondary and tertiary explosions that provide a much wider coverage while mapping, making for a smoother and faster mapping experience overall. On top of this, the explosions may overlap in the middle, being able to hit the enemy in the center with various explosions, making for a very decent boss killer. This build uses the Trickster Ascendancy, and for a couple of different reasons. First, I don't really enjoy the nodes for traps in the Saboteur Ascendancy. I think it lost a lot of value for traps when it was reworked a couple of leagues ago. And Trickster provides us with incredible amounts of throw speed, which is very hard to get overall in the game. Sustain while mapping, very good. As well as just an easier time giving us the evasion, energy shield, and suppress. So, For our passive nodes on the Ascendancy tree, first and foremost, I would recommend going with Swift Killer. This will give us a lot of trap throwing speed, as well as giving all of our charges a 30-second duration base. So very, very good first point to get. Next, I would go with Polymath. Polymath gives us infinite sustain while in maps while you're killing things, and also a lot of sustain while leveling, so it's very good to get this early. On top of that, it gives us a lot of more damage depending on how many masters we have allocated in the passive tree, which we are going to get quite a few. After this, I go into Escape Artist, and finally Spellbreaker. Both of these do similar things. Both of them provide us with a lot of evasion and energy shield and suppression, and allowing us to have a very good regen of energy shield, which will be very valuable for us, making us a lot more tankier than we would be otherwise. Also, the setup I'm running right now is able to get 100% suppress chance without even having to get a single piece of suppress on your gear. So it's very, very, very comfortable in the suffixes in that sense, and allows you to add extra things like ailment immunity potentially, or extra use of your suffixes that you might have, like an extra curse on your chest piece potentially, a bunch of different things that you could get with that freedom to move around without having to worry about having suppress on your gear. For our scaling vectors, we are converting a great part of the scale into both cold and fire. The spell has naturally 50% conversion to fire, and on the passive tree you convert another 40% to cold. So we are scaling these through both spell and elemental damage, and after that we go into crit damage as well, and a lot of power and frenzy charge stacking, which is very valuable for us because of the charged traps support, which gives us both crit and trap throwing speed. Also for leveling, you can level in one of two ways in my experience. You can level with the default version of Explosive Trap. It doesn't have a lot of coverage, but it does good single target damage. Or you can level with Lightning Trap linked to Pierce for a better clear, but a more finicky and difficult single target. So both options are valid. I've leveled with both in the past on different occasions, and both are fine. Eventually, while progressing this build, I would recommend you go into Heist, do a little bit of Heist farming if you're on SSF, or if you are on trade, you can do just trade for the item, but the Heist base mace that gives you a Secrets of Suffering as it's implicit is very, very valuable for this build. It will allow us to scale our crit to 100% very easily, as well as turn our Ignite into Scorch, further reducing the enemy resistance to our elemental damage, increasing our damage by a significant amount. Very, very, very good base, and all we are really sacrificing is potentially the flat on a wand implicit. Everything else is very, 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 very good, and I would take that trade any day of the week. For our defensive layers, we have about 25 to 30k base evasion. We have suppress cap, as I said, we have endurance charges, and then we run both Ghost Tents and Wind Dancer Keystones on the passive tree to, one, get a lot of sustain through Ghost Tents, and Wind Dancer reducing the damage we are going to take when we are actually hit. As a minor defensive layer, we also freeze a lot of the enemies, but this is not really reliable. I just thought I would mention it. Also, important to keep in mind that in the next patch, the skill is seeing some adjustments. The radius of the explosions is being reduced, and in compensation, the skill will have a higher base damage and high effectiveness of added damage. This should mean that we no longer have naturally 100% overlap on enemies with every single explosion. It will require some testing to see how much this affects the damage, but I believe the skill will still be fine and more than capable of performing as a league starter, and will be my personal league starter for 3.25, or 24, sorry. Even through that, I believe this is going to be a phenomenal league starter, and I think Trickster is incredibly powerful as an ascendancy overall, very underused, and will serve you very, very well in Necropolis League. And those are the builds I have for you today. I'll leave the POBs for both of them in the description if you want to check them out. If you enjoyed the video, do me a solid, subscribe to the channel and like the video, leave a comment telling me what you think of the build, and I'll see y'all later. Bye bye.